Game changers, game changers. Welcome back to At the Desk with Dr. KwA, the podcast where transformation begins with conversation. After a pause for reflection, we're back live for season two and more committed than ever to the conversation that matters most in education. Season two is about leadership under pressure, systems in transition, and people doing the work every day to make sure schools move forward. And of course, the conversations we can no longer afford to avoid. This is the space for honest dialogue, critical thinking, and collective growth. Whether you're a teacher, leader, parent, or community member, there's a seat for you at the desk. Let's get started. Today, I am very excited to have with us a guest who embodies that spirit of community. I'm honored to be joined by Mr. Quinton Sherlock. Mr. Sherlock is an educator, psychologist, and global mentor whose work spans Bermuda, the United States, and West Africa, specifically Ghana. Raised by a strong community in Southampton Parish, his journey in education has been shaped by deep belief in collective responsibility and opportunity for all learners. A graduate of the Barclay Institute, I had to get that right because I almost got a divorce papers on that pronunciation there. Mr. Sherlock earned a full Gulf Scholarship to Alabama State University. He studied psychology with honors and later completed a master's degree in clinical psychology at Auburn University at Montgomery. His professional experience includes lecturing at the university level, serving across public education systems, leading youth development initiatives, and founding Care Ghana. We'll delve into more. An organization dedicated to expanding access to education for underserved youth. Today, he continues his work as Director of Instruction at the Gulf Zone Ledbetter Academy in Bermuda, and as an educator supporting at risk and incarcerated youth. Mr. Sherlock's story challenges us to rethink where education lives and how leadership rooted in purpose can change lives. I'm excited to have him at the desk. Doc, let's get started.
Thank
Welcome,
you. Thank you. Having me.
welcome. So, can you share how growing up in Southampton Parish and being raised by a community shaped your view of education?
I think I was fortunate enough to come up in an era when we still kind of live by the notion of the village raising the child. So I was able to come up with a lot of positive role models around me and very much influenced by persons that may fall outside of my direct blood family, so to speak. But again, that notion of the village raising the child. So it's really kind of helpful. And as I matured and became a man myself, I try to kind of pay back what I received by pouring back into the community or the village, so to speak, wherever I found myself.
Awesome. So it sounds like that sense of community didn't just influence how you were educated; it followed you into how you led and teach.
Yes, yes, by all means. I mean, the thing that has fueled my journey through life, which has been golf, was kind of
Mm-hmm.
introduced to by a school teacher who was actually from a different country, from Wales, from outside of Bermuda, Mr. Jerry
Oh
Renshaw.
wow.
And so there we have that a bit of that fuse of my educational experience, but also someone, a part of my larger village that really kind of helped to kind of set my life on a trajectory that
Mm-hmm.
otherwise I would in other things. Not to say whether it would been better or worse, but definitely not heavily immersed in golf and the work that I'm currently doing.
Oh, awesome. So share with our audience, what did your community teach you that you believe schools often struggle to replicate?
The idea that you can always learn from your experiences. There are
Mm-hmm.
no, in essence, kind of mistakes. There are only lessons in life. Now, the notion is that we don't want to keep making the same error or tripping over the same step. That's not what we're encouraging. But if something happens and you can still kind of go on yourself and learn from that and grow and develop from that, I think that's something that I really learned from my community versus a structured formal educational setting, whereas you got to pass a standardized test. It's all or
Hmm.
nothing.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a great sentiment. The ability of the community to afford you the space to make a mistake and still be able to regroup and rebound and push forward. So, with that in mind, how can schools intentionally partner with the communities instead of working around them?
Well, I remember during some of my graduate work coming across a whole theory on this notion of community education.
Hmm.
And the premise within the community education theory was that schools actually partner with persons in the community that are quote unquote doing the work.
Hmm.
It takes many hands to do the work. It takes a village to raise the child. So, as opposed to
Absolutely.
the teacher trying to be the all and be all, find those community partners that they can partner with, particularly and send some of their children to those spaces to get a more fuller experience of not just academic life, but also more functional skills, more practical skills, things that are going to allow them to kind of survive. It's oftentimes easy to kind of speak to it and pontificate about it, but the work is one finding those committed community partners and then having those educators who are really passionate about seeing the young people improve, because also part of this community work is not so much for those high flyers that are already performing well in the classroom, but oftentimes when I speak, it's about providing outlets and avenues for those that may be having some difficulties in the academic setting, but again, going through the work, doing the hard work to try to find the spaces where they can, one, thrive, and then
Hmm.
two, translate those positive experiences back into a kind of academic setting.
So the beauty of what you just stated, I think, is an area where the formal setting tends to struggle with. Even though we speak of meeting scholars where they are, the challenge of the system's structure makes it difficult to truly meet scholars where they are. So with the infusion of the community, I think that provides an opportunity for balancing what is missing on the formal side through the informal connection. And I love that concept. So the work you've done with scholars in Bermuda and Ghana and in the States, what does it mean to truly see scholars beyond labels?
It's just understand well for me
Mm-hmm.
and working with three young people in these three different jurisdictions is one thing I've observed, and I mean it's also what you read when you study. So it's not like I'm making this up myself or the first person stating this. I'm reading what's really kind of out there. Is that one, young people are like sponges wherever you find them,
Mm-hmm.
whether it's a part of a quote unquote culture. They will absorb anything, most things that you kind of present to them in a positive and in a healthy way. And
Yep.
number two, the idea that how can we view the differences that we see in young people as potential as opposed to some abnormality which actually is viewed in kind of a negative light, in a negative
Mm.
context. That's some
Mm.
potential that we can tap into and then transform a channel in a particular way. And then we would see those same young people who are problems over here actually be shining stars or shining lights when
Mm.
you just kind of repackage it a little bit and put in the work.
There you go.
That's also magic.
Now, listen, that's music to my ears because I think oftentimes, and we find within the formal setting, a lot of scholars who look like you and I have the majority of the labels because our learning styles are a little different. It's difficult for us to just sit still, right? And just do the rote thing. So that for me, that opportunity to meet scholars truly where they are and tap into what makes them go is fantastic. And so just hearing you, I'm reminded that that community centered approach did stay local, right? Uh, how I met you was on a global, a different world, a different country, and so
Yes.
your learning through the community became global for you. And so I want to share a little video with our audience so that they kind of get a sense of what you've done in terms of the work. My hope is that this video plays well so that they can really get a sense of who you are and what you've done and are doing with our scholars in the community of Gobe Feta in Ghana. Let's see. Awesome, awesome. Now I'm hoping our audience got the full scope of that video because it looks like there was a soccer tournament and then a golf tournament or something going on. Can you just highlight some of the things that we observed?
Yeah, so basically that video kind of depicted, if you will, my journey within KwA Feta in Ghana, a
Mm,
place that I had moved to in 2015. And as a part of my introduction, what you would have seen in the initial part of the video, we hosted a football tournament because nothing is bigger than football in Ghana.
there
So
you
we did
go.
that as a kind of introduction to the community. But ultimately, my goal is my background being in golf and me being a golf professional, having worked and run junior golf in Bermuda before I moved to Ghana. My idea was to see if I can maybe introduce golf to the community and some of the young people to
Mm,
see if we can get some interest because I also know have lived the opportunities that learning golf and playing golf can bring to you. So, kind of the way
nice.
that we went about it was that well, no one knows golf, but everybody knows football. So we
Yes.
hosted a football tournament back in 2015. Did a little seminar during halftime with some of the football players, and then kind of used that as a soft introduction to literally the next Monday go into one of the middle schools in the community and introduce myself to the headmaster to see if I
Mm,
can work with his students around golf, but also around educational development.
okay. So when we talk about, I was fascinated because we first met in 2022 when I was in Ghana, and my wife was like, "There's a Bermudian guy living here, and he's working with Ghanaian kids on golf." And I'm going, "Wait, golf in Ghana? Are you serious? Like he actually is pulling that off?" And so we did come to visit, and I had the opportunity to walk with you through the community. And I have to share with our audience how impressed I was with the fact that the community by that time had embraced you. Um, you were a part of that community. They were comfortable with you. Scholars were coming up to you and hugging and, just happy to see you. And I'm going, wow. You know, I was very impressed. And so I couldn't wait for the after school program to start. And when they came out there swinging those golf clubs, I'm going, wait, they got a better swing than I do. And I claim to be a golfer sometimes. But yeah, but even the video, the swing of these scholars is amazing. I remember a young man, I think he was mute, if I'm not mistaken. Or was
Yes,
it
David.
deaf? That young man's swing. I mean, I'm hoping he gives Tiger Woods' record a run for his money in years to come. Uh,
Yeah, the interesting thing for me, around golf and in the community was like in 2015 when I first started, right after the football tournament, went to the school and asked the
mhm,
young people there who knew or had heard of Tiger Woods, and Tiger Woods had came on the scene in 1996. And 2015 in Guma Feta, none of the young people had even heard of Tiger Woods, yet alone
mm,
knew what golf was. But I remember, in those early days when I was coming up to the school, doing the program at their school, if they didn't see me, they'll be walking down looking for me, talking about Mr. Quinton, we want to do golf. And over the years, we've definitely been able to build up the trust in the
Mm-hmm.
community. Helped us with that, I think, is just the consistency of always being present. And sometimes in those sorts of spaces, we get people who come and kind of go. Luckily, fortunately, I've been able to kind of continue with the program through COVID and all of that. We kept the program going. So, I'm as much as possible, a part of the community. And like you said, I mean, we have a lot of talented young people. David is one
Yes.
case, young man is, as far as I'm concerned, fully mute, deaf, can't hear, can't talk. But yet, if you see him swing a golf club, he can go on the golf
Listen.
course. He knows what clubs to pick, and he's learned this, through his observations and just through himself having to find ways to survive. And we're working on some things to try to create some opportunities for him. But
Mm,
yeah, he's a very special young man. And even some of the other young kids, just the way how they're taking to golf, the dream and the vision was always to try to see if we can create a bit of a pathway for those that are academically strong enough
mm,
to maybe be able to compete for golf scholarships. And the day that we
nice.
can say we've got a young person from Guma Feta at an HBCU or something like that in the States on a full ride on a golf scholarship, for me, that's when I feel like now I'm
Okay.
starting to accomplish goals. We're getting there, but that's kind of like the ambition.
Okay. So, I will use the phrase that I heard you use quite often. Kakra kakra. Small, small.
Uh-huh.
We'll get there, right? We'll get there. So, in this process, right? What leadership lessons did you learn in Ghana, or have you learned in Ghana, that reshaped how you approach education today?
I think one of the big things, particularly going to Ghana to work, which in essence represents me going into not only a different space but a different culture, uh, really allows you to develop your sense of patience as a leader, because before you can get to directing and leading anything or anyone, you have to be able to make that connection. And
Right.
you're dealing with persons from a different kind of cultural quote unquote background, as much as yeah, I'm a black person, my ancestors are from Africa and all that good stuff.
Uh huh.
When the rubber meets the road, you still have to understand that people's lived experiences are sometimes different than your lived experiences. And then,
Absolutely.
therefore, when you try to present a particular message, you have to take into consideration what their experiences are making of that message, because it may not
Mm,
be the thing you are trying to impart. And that's really been one of my biggest learning, one of my biggest lessons as a leader, to try to have a bit of a broader perspective, know what I'm trying to present, but really do the work of trying to gather what are the young people really experiencing,
right.
and how can I help to kind of guide them, I guess, even more on an individual level, towards what I think may be good for them, but also what they feel is important for themselves.
Oh, nice, 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 nice. I love the fact that you're looking at leadership from the lens of your lived experience, versus their lived experience, and trying to merge those two worlds in a way that makes it possible for both of you to thrive in the setting or situation that you are in. And I think all leaders need to be mindful of that component when in the space of leadership. Understanding that the lived experiences of the people that they're trying to lead comes with some dynamic that
Yeah,
has to kind of align on some level with what they're trying to achieve in order to make sure that the success that we're both looking for manifests. So I love that component. Um, and so in that regard, what can school leaders learn from education systems in under-resourced contexts?
I think in some respects,
Uh-huh.
it's one of those things where we oftentimes hear that cliche, that saying, the good old days. And so look at sometimes, or if you compare under quote unquote under resourced context versus let's say a Guma Feather context, let's say versus a Bermuda or a US context. And then in the Bermuda or the US, if you reflect on that notion of what we talked about the good old days, then sometimes we weren't as materially affluent, when
Mm,
we weren't as so structured and bureaucratic in the approach to education, that you find that in order to even do the work, it's coming from the sense of passion, love, which then tunes you into the individual learner a little bit more, because I'm not doing it because it's a job, a profession, my paycheck. It's just actually what I like that I happen to get paid for. Because again, we don't have those material bells and whistles around us.
mm,
This is what I this is who I am.
right.
So my thing, as we do move forward, I'm not saying that money is a bad thing. Obviously, it's a good thing. But how do we move forward within our context, Bermuda, within our context of the U.S., but still kind of preserve the passion for the field, the passion for the industry, so that we can take the time out to try to meet each individual student where they're at, so that we can have the space to reach
Hmm.
those that need that little extra time, as opposed to I'm going in to do my job, this my curriculum, deliver my curriculum, take this, tweak that to make sure I meet my numbers, and then
Uh-huh.
where's my next batch in these under quote unquote under resourced spaces. What I notice is that old school, old fashioned care and compassion that we again we talk about in the good old days.
Right. The good old days, and those good old days tend to or have disappeared by and large. So I think those lessons from the good old days also come full circle when we look at how students or scholars you work with work now, right? You how you began and the level of relationship you've established, and I think that's an element that a lot of practitioners overlook, that relationship piece, because that's a critical component to the good old days. Because the good old days, you could have a hard-headed kid, but they were the hardest working person for a certain teacher, because that teacher
Correct.
was patient, has developed a relationship that allows that scholar to feel trust. And so in that regard, I used to tell my folks all the time, I had scholars who go through the wall for me if that's what I needed, because I had built that kind of relationship. And those with whom I did not have that relationship, there was always friction, right? And
Right.
so the village aspect also has to come into the equation, where it's not
Hmm.
just that one voice saying to one kid, "You need to do da 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 da." But when the child knows that the village is also surrounding him with love and embrace him for who he is, I think we get a better outcome in their performance, in the growth of their acumen, and all of the things that we expect of scholars as we work with them. So I thank you for the work you've done and are doing and Goma Fata Ghana, because now I'm looking for some Ghanaian golfers to come out. All these just for the record. I'm a Ghanaian, and if I see a Ghanaian golfer, I'm all in. Okay, I'm all in. So I'm waiting for that day where they'll announce for a few Ghanaian golfers, and I'm praying that they come from your lot so that we can see the dream realized. I love it. I love it. All right, all right. Let's move forward. Some of the work that you've also done involves incarcerated scholars and quote unquote at risk youth. Um, what's required to build trust? And I mentioned this a few seconds ago, to build trust with leaders who've been failed by the system. Learners, rather, to build trust with learners who've been failed by the system. What would you give to leaders who are watching this, to educators who are watching this, heck, to parents who are watching this, right? Um, some of the nuggets required to build trust with learners who've been failed by the system.
I think that you pretty much said it in what you had closed off with that last section. And
Hmm.
part of what fuels what I do, even what we've shared here in terms of my community and my lived experience, is that my mother was in education for over 50 years.
Okay.
And again, during her time, one of the things that she did, a little less bureaucratic, was some of those quote unquote sometimes trouble students used to be at my house on weekends.
Oh wow.
And so through that, years down the road, these guys still remember me, still even engage with me in a respectful, cordial manner
Mm,
because of how my mother had related to them and helped them through their educational
wow.
process. And so to answer your question, and what's also helped to facilitate my work with quote unquote at risk people and what nugget I can offer is to genuinely care and
Mm-hmm.
and express that you can feel it when you genuinely care. It resonates, something about your aura. They're gonna know, and then they will open the door and give you that space. What I've learned
Right.
is that for sometimes even working with those that are being sometimes dubbed some of the more difficult ones to get to, not even because of the work I've done, but in some cases because the shoulders who I'm standing on,
Mm.
who cared for them, assured them that they cared at the time, and this is the person introducing me into a space. Okay, they're opening the door and will tell me, point blank, yeah, it's only because XYZ that I'm even talking to you. They know I don't talk to nobody. But again, what's the genesis of that? They got a feeling that this person really cared for them.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And you mentioned the good old days. Some of the things that educators and practitioners used to be able to do in today's society, those tendencies are gone, right? That trust factor of, hey, come over during the weekend. Because then when you mentioned that, I remember talking to my father in law, who was also an educator, and he used to have the the at risk scholars at the house and kind of working with them and teaching them, manners and things along those lines. And so those scholars, as you're saying, still remember him till this day. They still remember his daughter, right? He just turned 90, and some of them were sending messages to him, and he teared up because, oh, wow, that's one of my former scholars. So
Yes.
the challenge in today's society is that vibe of the good old days, the vibe of the village working collaboratively to support scholars, that's dissipated.
Hmm.
You have to be in a special place or a special location for the manifestation of those good old day vibes to come back. Because I know for a fact, in the current state that we're in, some parents don't want you talking to the kids. They don't want you correcting
Right.
them. They don't want you even addressing their poor behavior or their whatever it is that, right? The minute you do that, somebody's coming after you with a lawsuit or wanting to fight you or all kinds of crazy things. So the question I guess becomes, how do we balance accountability with compassion, right? How do
Right.
we balance accountability with compassion? And what will it take to kind of get some of those good old day vibes back?
I mean, yeah, I think if I had the answer to that, I'll be straight. I won't have to do much more if I can actually answer that. But
Yeah.
that is, that the task. Again, in the space that I'm in, one of the spaces I'm in with the at risk, the challenge is just that. Um,
Mm,
Talking to my colleagues, we understand that the young people that we're working with, we are working with them as a safety net. In
mm,
other words, they weren't able to function within the previous space that they're in. So, so as to not just to completely throw them out to the water, they found themselves in our space. Now, we
mm-hmm.
all know habits, characteristics, and behaviors don't change overnight. So
No.
we're finding, issues, which is normal, which is part of the process. But again, to your question, we have to now find a way to effectively and efficiently balance the compassion. We are the safety net. So we can say one, two, three, check you later, because
Mm-hmm.
where is later gonna have them? So we need to be able to find the compassion to say, okay, yeah, yeah, you're doing that. You're not supposed to do that. I'm gonna
Mm-hmm.
take my deep breaths and work with you. But at a point, we also have to draw the line in the sand to say, you got to learn accountability somewhere, because even these consequences are a lot easier than when you
Mm-hmm.
get out in the quote unquote world, real or bigger world, and you
Mm-hmm.
go afoul of one of those rules, and then have to face those more dire, longer lasting consequences. So
Consequences.
that is
Yes.
the challenge
Wow.
that I don't have
Wow.
an answer to, unfortunately. I'm sorry, I can't.
Yeah. No. No. I wasn't expecting you to have the blue pill that solved that whole problem, right? But we definitely that's a conversation that must be had. We
Mm-hmm.
must continually explore to see
Yes.
how we can come up with that balance, right? So, um, you talk
If I
about the
can just add,
behaviors. Go ahead.
sorry, to kind of address that, the idea is having those honest conversations about what are the outcomes that we desire. So it's
Mm-hmm.
about getting the young, getting the parents, getting this the guardians, whoever are in the room, and trying to hold those honest dialogues where we set those goals, and then that's where we kind of begin to form the sense of accountability within those frameworks. Maybe some baby steps, and then
Mm-hmm.
going from there. The point that you speak to is that when we aren't all on the same page in
That's
terms
it.
of what right, what is not right, what is acceptable, what isn't acceptable, is when we start to see the conflict between educator and parents, and then
Mm-hmm.
the child or someone else potentially manipulating that. What was again and unspoken about the quote unquote good old days was that the community trusted the teachers,
Mm-hmm.
and we all
Yes.
trusted each other. So hence the saying about, if you got licks outside, you got licks again at the house, because the
Yes, you
parent
did.
didn't question out that corrected you, because clearly you did something wrong, or else they wouldn't have done it. But
Right.
now that kind of misconstrued, and then now we have a bit of a breakdown in that whole hierarchy, or whatever you want to call it.
No, great point. Great point. That failure to have everyone on the same accord with the same mission and goal. And the other challenge with that is how we get there, right? Because
Mm-hmm.
if the dynamics of how we get there are vastly divergent, it definitely makes it a tougher task, which is what I feel like we are currently dealing with in our formal settings and even at times within our informal settings, because again, people are coming with different lenses, especially
Mm-hmm.
working class scholars who we deem at risk or who have been incarcerated. So, the work that you've done with at risk and incarcerated learners, what would you say is the biggest misconception teachers, educators, community members may have about those scholars?
um as for misconception, I don't know if it's a misconception or whatnot, but my biggest thing that really jumps out at me about them is the fact that they all can be reached, and they all want to do better, want better for themselves. The job is to try to find a way to tap into that, and sometimes we may not be the right fit for that young person, but the
Hmm.
notion is that everybody, I mean, to engage in the work, it's maybe a bit euphoric, but everybody can be reached, is what I believe. And it's not to throw someone out, so to speak, but more sense, okay, pass them on. I can
Hmm.
connect with this person. I'm not saying, we're throwing the baby out with the bathwater, but here, here's my information. Here's what I understand. You try, and if it
Right.
doesn't work, you please pass them to someone else, because someone can connect with the young people that we see out there, and ultimately at a level, to some extent, because of whatever, a lot of what we see as misbehavior is them reaching out and calling out for attention for a variety of
Hmm.
reasons, whether it's environmental, whether it's biological, physiological, and when they get that little magnifying glass put on them, we all
Hmm.
feel warmer.
Yeah. Yeah. No, well stated. Well stated. And I think the important thing is not necessarily giving up, but hey, I gave it a shot, wasn't able to connect. Next man up, right? So let's keep, because eventually that child, that learner is going to be one lead in our community,
Mm-hmm.
right? So do we want them to be informed and positioned to lead future children within the community, or do we just want to say, okay, never mind, let's give up on this one, right? And
Right.
so, and I think oftentimes in today's current environment, the tendency is, well, I tried, it didn't work, so
Right.
on to the next child. Let me ask this as we're getting close to the end of this conversation here. What keeps you hopeful? What keeps you hopeful?
Um, the belief that if you do good, good will come back. In its own unique way and fashion,
Mm-hmm.
and the fact that I've been able to live it and experience it. Um, just to tell a little story, during the COVID time, I homeschooled 5 or 6 young people in KwA through
Mm-hmm.
through high school, and they all managed to complete high school, finished high school, and then as life happens, they went their own separate way, which I understand. At a certain
Mm-hmm.
age, yeah, we have our own intentions and desires for our life, but you then feel like, man, I know I've done my work, I know I put some time in, and again, life happens. But to actually have one of the young people reach back out to me and tell me about the wonderful opportunities that they've now gotten in a whole different part of the world, and how
Mm.
upon when they've taken the time out to sit back and just reflect on their experiences. The past is the past. What happened was what happened. But I'm appreciative that them expressing to me that they're appreciative of it because they can see how it helped them to grow and become a better person. So
Awesome.
that's part and parcel of why I do what I do, and the hope that keep doing good and good will continue to happen to you and for you.
Wow. Wow. Literally, that hope is really the heartbeat of this entire conversation. This is the hope. So before I let you go and let you out of this hot seat, so to speak, right? If you could leave educators and leaders with one mindset shift, what would it be?
It's like you have already said. Um, never give up. Never give up on the scholar. Even a little card I just got from some young people, and people say this to say, "Oh man, you have a lot of patience." And my thing is that I have a lot of patience for certain things, and young
Right.
people are I have a lot of patience for young people because I understand that they are all on their journey of learning and exploration, and we
Mm-hmm.
all can have the lived experience where we look back and we can see that older person that was telling us something back in the day, and now we can say, actually, they saw it, but because we
Mm.
were young, we just couldn't see it. And so,
Right.
bearing that in mind, as difficult sometimes as it can be working with a particular young person or whatever it may be, the notion is don't give up, because one day, you know, time will also hit them, and they will
Mm.
also they will even be more appreciative for the patience that you've shown them and not giving up on them.
Wow. Mr. Quinton Sherlock, words of wisdom. Truly appreciate you being part of the desk. Thank you
Thank
for
you. Thank
taking
you.
the time to join us, and I'm excited. I'm heading to Ghana in a few months, and I can't wait to swing by and see how these
Yep.
scholars are doing at the Gumbay Retreat, as we've beautifully
Thanks for
named.
having me, and a big shout out to you and the work you're doing.
I
Appreciate you.
appreciate it. I appreciate it. Just trying to get these voices out here into the landscape so that we can hopefully have an impact on the work that folks are doing with scholars in today's day and age. I truly appreciate you. Listen, game changers. I think you've just been given a nice nugget of elements. But today's conversation reminds us that education is not confined to buildings, borders, or test scores. It lives in relationships, opportunity, and belief. Season 2 of At the Desk with Dr. KwA is about centering conversations like this, conversations that stretch our thinking and call us to lead with purpose. I thank you all for joining us at the desk. Until next time, be well. Mr. Sherlock, thank you, thank you,
Thanks.
thank you. Peace, my brother.